Well, when Daryl Morey did not ring our phones, Derek, Kyle, and myself, and offering us that final roster spot, leaving that one open, but the main spot.
It was a sad Sunday for all of us.
It was a sad Sunday. We still held out hope before we got to training camp and preseason and all that we might get the call. Well, now we know why we did not get the call, because the man that many of you wanted and who we talked about last week at length as to should they look in his direction, Guerschon Yabusele is now a member of the Philadelphia 76ers on a one-year deal. And because of that, we will continue to do shows for ALLCITY and PHLY here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. Welcome to the show on a Monday. Happy to be here. Thrilled to always be here. Held out a little hope that we might get that call for that roster spot. But that being said, he might help them a little bit more than we could in the front court. Kyle, I think he passes the height test for you.
Yes, he's taller than I am.
He's taller than you.
That's first requirement for the rest of the guys on the roster. I was
Weighs
pleased
a little
to see
bit
it.
more.
I don't want to. Yeah, I would say more than a little bit.
A little bit more, and he might fit in ways that so many of you have plenty of questions about where that might be. So that's where we're going to start off today. Kyle Neubeck, Devon Givens, Andrew Frazier in for Brianna. She's on vacation this week, as we told you last week. So Drew is hanging out with us today. Derek is off for a few days as well. He might even check in the chat.
He just sent us a picture on Twitter of him apparently in a hammock, so overlooking some water and some forest. So
good for him.
Good for you, Derek. Enjoy your time off.
Absolutely. What's up, Jay? We see you in there. Michael B. So many people in the chat already wanting to discuss this. And if you are not a diehard member, we talk about this for reasons like I'm about to explain. When we did our emergency podcast yesterday, we appreciate everybody jumping in and sitting in with us on an early Sunday afternoon to get your Sixers fix in. And we also teased that Kyle was going to write a piece that was going to appear on allphly.com. He did that. He dropped it this morning. It's on allphly.com. In order for you to read the entire story, you have to be a diehard member to do so. So we implore you again to go out, sign up, tell a friend and tell another friend and tell another friend as the rest of the summer is here. We don't want to fast forward to anything, but we know we're getting to September, started training camp, preseason, and all of the news that you want to read about will be there from Derek and Kyle in regards to the Philadelphia 76ers. So make sure you go sign up to read that. If you haven't read it, we'll give you a little bit here today in show form and talk about what Kyle wrote in the piece about his fit, Guerschon Yabusele, where he fits, how he should be in the rotation. Does he maybe crack that starting lineup? Some people want to know. So that's where we begin, Kyle.
We'll get there eventually.
As you were doing your research and looking at some of the things with Real Madrid in Spain, and certainly looking at some of the things that he did with Team France in the Olympics, what did you unearth a little bit there for you? Maybe something that you didn't know about Yabusele since the last time we saw him in the NBA.
Well, so here's what I would say to start. I think we talked about it on previous shows, right? That when he was drafted initially, the initial nickname he was given was that's French Draymond. And the Celtics, among many other teams, to be fair, the Celtics were chasing the idea of next Draymond. And when you think of that, you think primarily of the defense, right? Like what he was able to do behind Steph Curry, behind Klay Thompson, behind these other guys, quarterbacking the defense, as well as pairing with Steph Curry as a dribble handoff, pick and roll partner. He's a devastating short roll passer. And I think when people saw Yabusele coming out, you think of that defense first, and then you see, oh, look, there's some ancillary offensive skills. He can post up, he can do this, he can be that short roll guy a little bit. I think the more that I dove into the tape, I watched some games yesterday, I watched the Olympics, I watched them in FIBA last summer, I'm a little more skeptical on the defense, but I'm actually probably more in on the offense. But I do think it's going to take some proper context for him to succeed. So one of my big questions initially, obviously we've talked about the shot is very important for him. The shot is probably the key component for him to be an every night consistent rotation player in the NBA. He's been a 40%-ish shooter from three over basically like 10 seasons overseas. Now, some of those were pre-NBA. Some of them are post-NBA. And it is worth noting, we've said this multiple times already, that is a shorter line. And that is, he is going to have to increase the distance he shoots from in the NBA. So that's first line of skepticism is, will he succeed on that longer line? He did not the first time, shot 32-ish%. But connected to that, in Spain and for Real Madrid, a lot of offense for him, and rightfully so, came through the post. He's a big, solid, strong guy. And a lot of what he was able to do for Madrid is take a mismatch, a size disadvantage for the other team, and just pound that dude through the rim. He's got quick post moves, good soft hands. So if he gets a smaller guy on him, can hit him with a drop step, spin move baseline, hit a layup, whatever it might be, draw a foul. And he's really comfortable on that baseline area. My question as he becomes, just one of the guys rather than, he was probably like the third option or so on Madrid and probably similar playing for Team France, is if you can't get those post touches, which as we've seen with Tobias Harris, those can be rhythm touches for guys, right? Like you get those deep ones, you score some quick points, easy points at the basket, then you expand the range, then you step out to three. So if he's not able to get those for whatever reason, does that then increase the likelihood that he struggles as an outside shooter? I don't know. It's always hard to know when a guy goes from sort of featured player to just a rotation player. That's a tough adjustment to make. So that would be my first point of concern. But I think you can see a lot of different skills, right? You see that ability to attack mismatches. He is more comfortable, I think, watching him now as a spot-up guy. When I watched some of his Boston tape, you could see him stepping out of open threes for that shorter long two, which is more equivalent to the three-point line that he's shooting at overseas in Europe. So I think he's made a proper adjustment there just in the comfort. He runs the floor really hard, and so whether he's playing as a forward, which is where I think most of his minutes will be, or he's playing as, a small ball center and he's running with Tyrese Maxey, he's running with some of their other smaller perimeter players, that will give them a big target. I think he's a good transition guy, both because he's strong enough to just go through people at the rim, and he also knows how to fill a lane, get out to the wing, hit a three on the wing if he needs to create space for the guys who are going to be handling the ball. So a lot of stuff that I like offensively, and that's sort of where I start, right? Because I do think defense is a little bit more of a question mark, and that's going to depend on maybe what the matchup looks like or who he's got around him.
Yeah, so defensively, Draymond, and using that comparison, because Draymond had created this new position in the NBA with what he was able to do with the Golden State Warriors. Like you guys said last week, the one thing is you don't have a Steph Curry, Klay Thompson to go with him. Now, it's not ignoring who Tyrese Maxey and Paul George are. It's just talking about where Yabusele is going to have to fit in. And looking at it defensively, especially this late, 29, if he's not that guy already in Spain, he's not going to be that here against these players. So you take what you can get from him defensively and hope for the best when it comes to that. He's going to be out there with Andre Drummond, maybe out there with Joel Embiid at times, depending on what Nick Nurse wants to do. So you just, again, take what you can get and hope that there's some other defenders out there with him. Now, the size, that should help a little bit, maybe you feel a little bit better. And as we talked about on the emergency pod, those effort rebounds, those effort hustle plays that he should be a part of with everybody else, especially as a second unit, you got to give it all and bust it while you're out there on the floor with whomever's at the center position. On the offensive end, when you talk about the shooting from beyond the three-point line because it's closer overseas than it is in the NBA, I'd imagine anyway with him that a lot of it is going to be that short corner three that we would see a lot of PJ Tucker for what he did. I was also thinking the Marcus Morris in the Sixers offense because we saw it, but Marcus Morris's range is so much different than Tucker's and Yabusele's. I still want to look at it, but I would think that Yabusele right now is going to be more of that short corner, three-pointer, catch it in the corner, rise up. Because when I was looking at your film, looking at some of the other stuff, that when you saw him, he still has this elongated release. That
it's consistent, but it's slow.
But it's just long.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. It's consistent as his. He makes it at that good clip that you talked about, but it is a longer release. And to do that, you're going to have to be in the short corner right now. I don't think they're going to change too much of how he shoots now coming in here. It's just more of extending his range right now. So all of that shooting, and then the other stuff. Again, thinking about Marcus Morris and how he accepted his role, what he did when he did have those opportunities for those mid-range shots or putting the ball on the floor and attacking the basket, and then even putting the ball on the floor and attacking the basket and then turning it into a back to the basket, take you down, pound, bounce the basketball, don't get a 5-second count, but just get down there and back to the basket, try to score in that way. There's a variety of things there, including the screen and roll. Doubt there's too much screen and, pick and pop, but more of that screen and roll for him because of his downhill ability to get to the basket with that strength that he has. Maybe gets to the free throw line a little bit, or because of the willingness of a passer that Kyle talked about yesterday on our emergency podcast, that he can now find others while he's out there. You've seen that he is willing to pass for the stuff that we saw with Team France while we saw them play those few games heading up to that gold medal game, that he is willing to pass the rock and dump the basketball off to a teammate for a much better shot. So there are good things to like. And I just kept going back to the Marcus Morris piece just because of the size that we talk about around that 6'8", where his role is going to be. Before Marcus Morris had the opportunity to really crack that rotation, it was some of Robert Covington. There certainly was Nick Batum before injuries started to happen and pushing those guys more into the rotation. I think Marcus Morris is a better player. Well, he's an older player, but in his prime, we know Marcus Morris is a way better player than Yabusele. But just looking at how he accepted who he was in that role, played some of that mid-range game, some of the other things, the questions that, Derek will have a lot of questions about Marcus Morris's defense. If we at least come into right now, accepting him for who he is, Yabusele, defensively, and then seeing some of the stuff that maybe translates from Morris in that offense as a 4 and doing some of those types of things, you could at least see some positives there. Younger player, maybe not the shooting range from perimeter overall, but some things that you saw there that could translate from what Morris showed a little bit of to what Yabusele may be doing in Nick Nurse's offense.
So you brought up a name that I want to circle back to there, which is PJ Tucker. When I was watching a lot of his tape and then trying to think of, how does this apply to the Sixers context and how they set up last year, one of the things I wrote in the article at ALLPHLY was maybe somewhere between what Kelly Oubre did and what PJ Tucker does, which is, if you think about all the baseline cuts and the dunker spot work that Kelly Oubre was doing, where Kelly is a much more explosive, immediately vertical athlete than Yabusele. But Yabusele, if you are going to put him in that corner, right? And I think that's a lot of his time for Madrid, for Team France, is weak side corner. That's the shortest shot, the easiest shot as a three-point shooter. And then you can sneak in there both as a cutter and as an offensive rebounder. He's got enough verticality and enough size and enough strength, frankly, that he can be a consistent finisher in that spot. So I think, you brought up whether he's playing with Joel or Andre Drummond. And I think for Yabusele's sake, he'd be much better off playing with Joel Embiid, because Joel will be able to drag, whether it's just his defender or in many cases, a second defender out to him at the elbow, on the opposite block on the post, maybe even to the other corner if they're, using him to space out and running other stuff. And that allows somebody like Yabusele to do more, sneaking in and just getting into the crevices of the defense or the soft spot when help and pressure is coming elsewhere. And he's used to playing with other bigs, right? He played with Tavares and Vincent Poirier in Spain. He obviously played with Wemby, and last summer played with Rudy Gobert quite a bit as well as at the FIBA World Cup, and has good instincts for, okay, if I'm in the dunker spot or if I need to get to that spot to be an outlet to the other big, I can get there and then finish right away. So I think he's pretty good at that already. And if he plays with Andre Drummond, the one thing that I think will help is that there will be some overly ambitious passing from Andre Drummond. But Andre Drummond is a pretty good mechanical passer, and I think he'll be able to hit him on some of those, ridiculous behind the back or wraparound passes, whatever it might be. And so I think there are opportunities for them to create good offense as long as they have other spacers, like real shooters around them. And that's all well and good. I think what a lot of people are just hoping for is the activity, right? And Michael B and some other people in the chat have been going back and forth on his rebounding. I don't know that he's quote unquote a great rebounder. I do think he has a really good nose for the ball, and I think he's got a good motor for loose balls in general. So some of the examples I threw in today's article were free throw rebounding, just like he's first off the floor to slither around somebody, beat a guy to a spot, grab the ball. There were examples I saw where somebody else is boxing out the biggest guy, and he came in from the side, like we saw Ricky Council do at times last year, and just went up, grabbed it, two hands, and then you're out. And I think you have to think of outside of an elite group of guys. So Andre Drummond, I put in this category. I put somebody like Jokic in this category. Guys that are elite rebounders. I think rebounding today, with the way shot profiles have changed, there are more threes, so more long misses, weird bounces coming in from rebounding is a team skill. It is a team commitment. And I think Yabusele helps them on multiple fronts. One, he can box people out, right? Like, he is a big dude. So if he hits somebody
with a wingspan,
that person is moving back, and he has the ability, whether it's him grabbing that ball or it's falling to one of his teammates because he created space, he can help there. I also think, as I said, the nose for the ball is good. He puts himself out there, will dive and hit the floor, will jump into somebody if he needs to. Maybe he's not allowed to play as physically in the NBA. That's kind of a question I have going in. But even if he is not a great individual rebounder, like, he's not going to come in and be Dennis Rodman, Kenneth Faried type of guy. But if he offers that level of physicality next to Joel Embiid, next to Andre Drummond, next to a bunch of 6'8" athletic wings that they have on this team now, I think he will help contribute to what has been a problem, or will help fix the problem that they've had over the last 4 or 5 years or so.
Especially if he knows his role. Well, I want to ask about what it looks like, him in the lineup, who's he's best on the floor next to. You talked about the Joel Embiid piece, but what about the guards, the wings that fit best next to Yabusele in this particular offense of Nick Nurse's? We talked about PJ Tucker, of course, Marcus Morris a little bit, and some of the others. We'll dive into a little bit more, break it all down right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast.
Well, guys, there haven't been many day-to-day annoyances in Sixers world lately. They're signing everybody that the fans want. The people are all in on the good vibes that have been created. But presumably at some point in the months to come, there will be tough times. There will be an injury. There will be a bad rotation choice by Nick Nurse. Something will go wrong. Maybe there's somebody gets eats something bad when they're in the Bahamas during training camp and gets sick.
Oh,
but
get there.
Before you get frustrated about your Philadelphia 76ers, I need you to take a step back, choose chill, and then you can reach for an ice cold Coors Light, because with Coors Light, you're getting an ice cold beer when the mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans. When they hit that perfect temperature, I have needed some choose chill moments throughout this summer as you're putting in work on the house. Social calendar is really busy. You just feel like, hey, battery's on empty. I've actually randomly run into Devon at times this summer when it's the end of a weekend, and I'm like, buddy, I can't believe we have to go back to work tomorrow. There's just a lot going on outside of work. But listen, we get to come in here, have fun every single day during the week, and so I can step back, choose chill, and then to end my day, maybe have some mountain cold refreshment. So when you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light, get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company in Golden, Colorado. You know what else is great in
What's
the
that?
summertime? I won't say you always need it, because you don't want to be the sunglasses at night guy. But when you're having a nice Coors Light or a drink of your choice on the beach, out on the back deck, at a picnic, at a barbecue, whatever it might be, you need some sunglasses. Got to protect your eyes, and Shady Rays, our friends, have you covered. So get ready for the season. I can't even say season ahead anymore. It's the season that's coming to a close pretty soon.
Yeah.
But you always need sunglasses. In fact, I think you need them even more in the winter when the snow hits. The sun is reflecting off them. So get ahead of the game. Get them now. Enjoy them for the summertime. Hundreds of options to choose from. You are bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. You guys have seen mine in here quite often. I've worn them for some funny rants. I've worn them for some segments. I really enjoy my Shady Rays. I keep them with me pretty much all the time. I always have them there.
Does Derek have his on vacation?
Derek most likely is on the banks of some river somewhere with his
hammock.
With a hammock. He's got a cooler that we'll talk about later, and he's got his Shady Rays to keep the sun out of his eyes. Here's the best part, guys. If you don't love them, you can exchange your Shady Rays for a new pair or return them worry-free within 30 days. No risk shopping. So exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays giving out the best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code PHLY for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. And I will say, if any of you out there, the ad read's over, but I just want to make my own pitch here.
Yeah.
If any of you have never worn polarized sunglasses and just wear like quote unquote normal sunglasses, the difference between a non-polarized and a polarized pair is outstanding. It's like, I can't believe I ever wore non-polarized sunglasses once you put them on. So to get a 35% off deal on good polarized sunglasses, got to take advantage of that.
Have to, especially those last minute trips that you have trying to sneak in before the rest of the summer comes to a close, which stinks because it seems like it went pretty quickly. It always goes the same amount of time, but it just seems like it went pretty quickly. Here, Derek is out there with his sunglasses with some Coors Light, choosing chill.
When you spend 8 days in Vegas, I think the summer flies by.
That was 16
otherwise
days.
Pretty quickly. It's like, that felt like days. 3 weeks. So the rest of the summer was like, woo, right by us.
Yes, it was. And so the PJ Tucker piece, when we were talking about Yabusele last week, and I mentioned him as a possible fifth, a small ball center, and using him in that PJ Tucker role. So you expanded it a little bit and went on a little bit more, putting him at the 4, but still doing this stuff that PJ Tucker did as a starting power forward on this team next to Joel Embiid. So because of that, what is that best lineup that possibly looks best with him next to Maxey, Eric Gordon, Kelly Oubre, Paul George, whomever it may be? Tyrese Maxey, obviously. Is it someone else, more activity like Ricky Council, just running 100 miles per hour up and down the court? Yabusele, and looking at him playing for Real Madrid and with France, some of the better lineup combinations, because I saw Jay ask the question, figured I'd throw it at you based on the research that you did, and of course the story that you've written on allphly.com.
Okay, so I'll go in 2 ways here. I do think the clear best option for him is next to Joel Embiid, playing, whether that's bench minutes, or we'll get to the should he start type of question. I know people are. I love the passion and the energy. It's like they signed the 14th guy on the roster. He's got to start
because we don't have any power forwards.
To be clear, I don't want to be too dismissive, because when they signed Kelly Oubre last year, we were kind of like, to the people who said, should he start? And then turns out he ended up having a great season, all that. So I don't want to poo-poo anything quite yet. So here's what I would say. Best case for him is playing next to Joel Embiid, where he'll be able to do get more of those duck-in touches. The pressure on him to shoot will be there, but it's not quite as fierce if you play with Andre Drummond, who's a non-shooter, or you play with even a Dembona, if there's a case where that ever happens, you have to shoot, right? Because you can't have a complete non-shooting front court that's going to collapse spacing. It'll make it impossible for whether it's Maxey, Paul George, Lowry, Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon, whoever it might be. They won't have opportunities to attack the basket if you completely compromise the spacing. So I think the easiest path for him is you play him with Joel Embiid. You hope he shoots, high 30s, hopefully low 40s from 3. Mm-hmm. But if he doesn't, he can still do some of that stuff in the dunker spot on the drop-offs from Joel and whatnot, and that might work. Small ball center is a really interesting thing for him that I do think it's a lot dicier than you would think, but I think he offers their first real opportunity to play that type of lineup of the summer, right? Because Andre Drummond, true center, paint-bound player. A Dembona, true center, paint-bound player. Yabusele has the ability to step out. And I think if you start thinking about lineups where Maxi's the lead ball handler, Yabu is basically the center, and then you have 3 wings between them. You use those wings to space out. You could run some pick and pops and pick and rolls, both of which I think Yabusele is comfortable in. He likes that above the break 3, and I think he's got soft enough hands, and he's a strong enough downhill guy that if you get him on the roll, he can finish with, fairly good accuracy. If teams try to overplay Maxi on that, he's going to have some good opportunities, and I think he can do great things with it. But also, if you want to switch it, like let's say they're trying to use a shooting guard size player, like a 6'4", 6'5" type guard to guard Maxi, and then they switch that action. Yabusele is putting that type of player, if you're thinking about the normal weight and strength of that guy, he will take them into the post. And that's a quick, like, oh, you want to switch? We'll give him the ball. And that's where you can tap into things like his ability to post guys up. So I'm not saying that that's going to be a key part of his game in the NBA. But I think if you play him as a 5, you just open up these different avenues of like, oh, we can tap into this skill. We can tap into this skill. And again, I do like how much and how hard he runs. There was a play I saw yesterday where created a turnover by diving and hitting the floor and threw it back to, I want to say it was Campazzo, who played for the Nuggets at some point. And no sooner had the ball come out of his hands, he sprung up, got to his feet, and he's like, give me the ball back. And he goes the other way for a dunk. And like, that's the sort of energy that I think small ball lineups need to succeed. You can't have a guy who comes in as a, whatever they want to list them at, 6'6", 6'8". I know there's been the discrepancy that we've talked about. You have to come in thinking like, I'm going to hit everybody first. I don't care if I'm 4 inches shorter than this guy. I'm as strong. I can make an impact in 3, 4, 5 different ways. And so I don't think that they're going to turn to him there often. I don't know that they ever will, but I do think, having watched him in that role a little bit, in the right situation, I think he gives them an opportunity to play that way.
I just like the idea of it being a possibility, which is why we talked about it last week, because having seen it with PJ Tucker and doing that, even having Marcus Morris sometimes at the 5, when we would discuss that and saying Joel's out today, maybe they should go with Marcus Morris at the 5 and just go that route because you're letting Tyrese Maxey cook anyway offensively. Just let that work. Defensively, there'll be some struggles, whether he's 6'6", 6'8", and we just talked about how he's not the greatest defender, but it gives you so much more in terms of sometimes you're going to give up some buckets, but guess what? On the other end, with his physicality on the offensive end and the possibility of some pick and pops there and finding himself in the corner, screen and rolls with Tyrese Maxey and whomever the other wings are, or shooter like Eric Gordon spraying out somewhere along that 3-point line, that he can find him again on those short rolls. I like that ability for his willingness to pass, because seeing him and looking at, let's say there's a high pick and roll, middle of the floor between he and Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey bounce passes it to him to his right, and you have somebody else cutting along that baseline from the left. They have to figure out what they're going to do and committing, because 2 men are already kind of bunched up there trying to figure out, after Maxey did what he did and trying to commit to him, do you have Kelly Oubre or Ricky Council, somebody coming along again that baseline for that opportunity for a bounce pass, a quick alley-oop for a dunk, or whatever it might be, that he's willing to do stuff like that. So it gives you those opportunities. And if it's not there, then yeah, he can keep going and put his shoulder into the defender and put them in the basket with him, whether it's a layup or some sort of explosive dunk that he finishes at the rim because of his offensive skill set. So there are a lot of combinations, I think, with the personnel that they've put together that they can look to go to, whether it's Paul George, Kelly Oubre. We mentioned the shooters around with Eric Gordon. I mean, heck, even somebody as smart as, we haven't even mentioned Kyle Lowry, if he's the point guard when he comes into the game, or Reggie Jackson. Those guys are smart in running those pick and rolls and how to use the roller and how to use them best to their advantage, and of course to make it a positive play for the 76ers. So he just brings so much. And again, I know we're talking about the 14th man, and we're going to get into all the other stuff of him being a starting player on this basketball team. But at this late stage, once again, same way we talked about revisiting it because I wasn't here. The guys were here to talk about Kelly Oubre signing late. This is just a good, high risk, low reward pickup by Daryl Morey, Elton Brand.
I think it's opposite.
I'm sorry.
High risk, low reward is not what you want.
High reward, low risk, high reward guy. Low risk, high reward guy, and Yabusele for what he does and to bring it in. And again, I was pounding the table, ringing the bell, if you will, for Marcus Morris to come back here. But seeing them pivot to this after having seen him now on the Olympic stage, going back and then looking at the numbers and looking at the play that he did with Real Madrid and seeing how at least he seemed like he wants to be back in the NBA. And based on some of the information here that we got of them figuring out whatever with the buyout, as we talked about that.
And that's the big one.
He
of the things
wanted to be back. Yeah.
And not only wanted to be back, he wanted to be in this situation specifically, right? Because one of the things that struck me yesterday as I was going through all this, talking to different people, was it's not like they're the only team that could have offered him a minimum. And I would put them pretty far down the list of, open opportunities if you're just going to sign a minimum, right? Like he could sign a minimum, you brought it up on one of the other shows, Portland or Washington or one of these teams that's rebuilding
minutes
to like, hey, we're looking for upside. Let's take a swing on this guy. And that's a guy that walks into the rotation pretty much right away. Now, I don't know what Daryl Morey or the Sixers front office might have told Yabusele or his agent about, what's available to him here. I'm sure there were conversations about, hey, this is what it looks like for you. But I don't think this is some clear, like, hey, he's going to play right away.
No.
And I think it says a lot about him that he was like, okay, like there's limited immediate financial upside. We don't know the full negotiation process for the buyout at this point. I think there was probably some finessing on his agent's end with Real Madrid. And we don't know that there's an immediate rotation opportunity. What we do know is this is a very good team. I'm coming from a team that was, if they're not the best team in Spain, they're top two basically every single year. I'm a third option type guy. I care about winning. I want to come here. I'm coming off an Olympics where I got a silver medal. I was a big featured player on that team, but I'm setting the ego aside. I'm setting, individual stats and things aside. I want to come somewhere where I have a chance to really compete and where he brings something different than the Kelly Oubres, the Caleb Martins, and some of these other guys. And so I think that speaks well of, what I would call his basketball character. Like he's focused on what seems to be the right things. I hope that continues no matter what happens with training camp, preseason, and what we see his role turn out to be in the early season. But I said it yesterday, Devon, when we were first talking about this. I think the great thing about this offseason and where they're at is outside of the top three, there is competition basically everywhere. Backup point guard, Kyle Lowry and Reggie Jackson are fighting for minutes. If you're talking about, a depth forward / wing, you got Yabusele, you got Ricky Council, you got KJ Martin. And all those guys have to play for various reasons. Like Yabusele wasn't jumping to the NBA to not play at all, to ride the bench and just sit in the background. Ricky Council is an ascending player. He wants to, he's chasing that next contract. KJ Martin on the organization's end, they're incentivized to showcase him because, as we've talked about many times, they want to probably try to trade him mid-season, like using that contract. And the more valuable he is or shows himself to be as a rotation guy, the easier that gets. Even at the backup big, the backup center minutes, like Drummond is the clear guy behind Joel Embiid, right? But now that Yabusele is here and we think, hey, maybe he would play some small ball five from time to time, that's going to push Adem Bona a little bit. Jared McCain is fighting for minutes in that backcourt with the other undersized guys. Almost every single guy on this roster beyond the top 3, 4, maybe 5 guys is in a legitimate battle for their position. And I tend to think that brings the best out of everybody. Practices will be harder. Guys will be more engaged with the game plan. They know that their margin for error is thinner. You have to hit a certain bar, a certain standard to get on that floor. So I think getting another guy like this coming off a big Olympics. Obviously, he's in
He's
in
hot
good
right
physical
now.
shape. He's like mentally, he's going to come in. Like, look, I was beating up a lot of these guys in the NBA.
I'm gonna come over here and
in
I'm
the
gonna
Olympics.
destroy
I'm coming
KJ
in hungry.
Martin.
I'm coming in ready for my opportunity.
Right.
I think that sets such a great tone heading into the season where everybody in the chat, everybody listening on the audio feeds, wherever else, we're all coming in saying, this is, you got to get conference finals, win the title this year. There are those type of expectations. So any move like this that is increasing the urgency, increasing the competitiveness, I am all for it.
Well, we're talking about backups and all that stuff. Yabusele is like, nah, man, I'm coming in here to start. Well, we'll talk about that because there's some people who have questions about him possibly starting in those spiriting practices.
I love the energy.
He's really going to have to get after it in those spirited practices, and we'll tell you where those practices are going to begin when training camp gets underway. We'll talk about that next also right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. Also, have to tell you about our friends at TrueMark Financial. They are our great partners here, and we've talked about them as the great institution, financial institution that they are, where you can store your funds and all that great stuff. Well, that is very true, but they also get into the little sporting world as well. As not just being a part of our inaugural golf tournament that we had while we were away and being a big part of that.
I wish we could have been there rather than in Vegas for the 7th straight day or whatever it was.
Well, we might have a chance to be a part of this one, and that is the TrueMark Financial Care Foundation hosting a charity pickleball event to raise money for financial education in our local communities. For those of you who are at the golf outing, you might remember our friends from TrueMark. And if you do remember them, this is to benefit their foundation charity. For those who are not like us, we want a chance to be a part of it as well, see what it looks like. And the event is on September 7th at Upper Dublin Sports Center in Ambler, PA. That's from 1:30 to 5 p.m. It's a round robin, meaning it's a fun, non-competitive, Kyle, event.
No such thing.
Competitive.
No such thing.
We'll have a certified pickleball pro on site to overview the game for anyone who's never played before, like myself. And you don't need prior experience to be a part of the event.
Certified pickleball pro. That's a phrase that just sounds wrong to me.
He can save his money at TrueMark. How about that? The paddles and the pickleball will be available to use for free on site. Cost to play, though, is $50 to benefit the charity. All players get a swag bag from TrueMark and PHLY. And again, Bree kept telling us about how great the swag was of what they got at the golf outing. So we can't wait to see what they do for this event. If you want to get your company involved and be a part of the sponsorship, have your logo on display at the event. They're selling a variety of sponsorships from $200 up to $1,000. So jump in on that. The event details, if you don't want to play, but you can still support the event, there will be food, beer trucks on site. A percentage of the proceeds, again, will go to charity. There will be music, cornhole, and other lawn games, 50-50 raffles, more prizes to get that and giveaways at the event on the day. We'll be there hopefully on that Saturday. Come spend some time with us. Best part, as an PHLY fan, you get a 10% discount on registration. Just register at truemark.com/PHLY pickleball to become a part of the pickleball event. Thanks to TrueMark.
You said the phrase beer truck. Now I'm just imagining a fire truck with a beer hose attached to it, and somebody needs to create that. That's
you just gave them an idea.
Listen, hey, Coors Light, wherever you are, we need a beer truck.
You just gave him an idea. So it's all in the mix. Also in the mix while Derek is on vacation, he has to have this rugged road cooler floating.
Oh, yeah.
He said he wanted to have the cooler floating in the lake. So we have to tell you about what Derek's doing right now with the Rugged Road Cooler. It's a dedicated, Rugged Road is dedicated creating innovative and durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best. The products is designed with the highest quality materials and craftsmanship, ensuring they perform in the toughest conditions, like floating in a lake. Whether you're on land or water, Rugged Road gear is built to accompany you on every adventure. And the most unique feature of it is the ability to always float upright. Never lose a drink.
We love a floatable, lightweight, durable, cooler that also keeps everything ice cold. It's the best of all worlds.
So whether it's one of these bottles, one of the bottles that Kyle was talking about a little bit earlier, it's right there for you. And unlike other heavy duty coolers, Rugged Road coolers are incredibly light, making them easy to transport on any trip without compromising in performance. The durability and dependability is there, crafted to handle the toughest environments. Versatility, perfect for a variety of outdoor activities, from fishing, tubing, to camping and tailgating. These coolers are designed to meet the needs of every outdoor or sports enthusiast. So gear up for your next adventure with Rugged Road coolers. Reliable, durable, and built to be used. Rugged Road is your ultimate cooler companion. Head to ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use the code PHLY for 10% off.
Coolers are a great seat at a tailgate. So it makes sense that the next innovation was, we're just going to turn this into a little boat on the river. I'm just going to float with my cooler, right?
Might as well. Yeah.
The natural evolution of the cooler. Thank you to Rugged Road.
I can't wait to hear. He was waiting for this, Derek was. So
he was very excited about it.
I can't wait to find out how this all played out. All right, playing out on the floor. Could he start at the power forward position? We've had Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey penciled in with Paul George. We've also included Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre. So you go with the 3-wing lineup, and that's pretty darn good based on what we have thought. We've also thrown in there where the guys pointed out, could Eric Gordon also be a possible starter at the 2-guard position, just to kind of balance it out a little bit more with some shooting. But now people are so enthusiastic about this move.
It's always the next guy. Next guy comes in, he's a starter.
Yabusele has to start because he's a traditional power forward at the forward position. And you keep saying how he fits best on the floor next to Joel Embiid. So Kyle, could we possibly see him coming into this training camp so good because his mind is right after everything he did, winning a silver medal, finally getting back into the NBA after 5 seasons, battling it out in camp with KJ Martin and Ricky Council IV and Eric Gordon? Could he earn a starting spot at the power forward position because it just simply makes sense in Nick Nurse's offense?
Okay, so as I said earlier,
you like how he said okay first?
Because we downplayed the Kelly Oubre starter possibility last offseason, I am not going to outright reject the premise where we sit today. What I will say...
You hear that, Phil W? We apologize.
What I will say is that I think it's more likely he's not a rotation player than he's a starter, right? And the evidence for that is he was in the NBA and then left the NBA. And that's not to discredit or disavow the success he's had for Madrid, the success he's had in FIBA and Olympic play. I think you can see the thing that really jumps out at me is like he just looks built better now. Like his more definition in his arms, is using his weight and his strength more effectively than he used to. And I think given that he has real skills at his size, that's a big part of the battle.
Can I add this to your point? Because I was talking to a Celtics fan who's a family member of mine, and they were like, just saw the signing. You guys got the better version. Now you haven't seen him back here yet, but seeing him on that stage, they were talking about how big he was. He was so overweight. That kind of, seeing him and playing for Team France in the USA, were like, you guys got a decent late rotational pickup. And they were very interested to see who he is now with the Sixers.
Yeah, so I think that gives him a much better chance this time around. But look, we could end up in a situation where still can't shoot on the longer three-point line. And then it becomes, what is your role? Where do you fit? A non-shooter doesn't fit next to Drummond, and you don't want non-shooters next to Joel. And so can you make up for it defensively? Well, I'm a little more skeptical of him defensively than a lot of people are. The more that I watched it, when he's really engaged and he's active, I think he can create some big moment type plays. Like we saw some big blocks around the rim. And I think if we're talking about playing next to Joel Embiid, that's a much better situation for him where, look, you have the safety blanket of Joel. Maybe you can gamble a little bit. And if Joel happens to get beat somewhere, you're then flying in. You're the extra man in rather than the last line of defense. And I don't think it's impossible that he could start at some point. I just think he's a minimum guy making the jump back from Europe. Odds are he's fighting more to get into the rotation. And the Sixers will start the year with Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre, whether it's Gordon or somebody like whoever, one of those wings, maybe two of them, plus the big three of Paul George, Maxey, and Embiid is more than likely going to be how they're going to sub it. And I think Yabusele fits more into that group of him, Ricky, KJ, where you're the athleticism, energy, toughness, strength, rebounding wave that you just throw at teams off the bench. And they could go really deep if they wanted to. Like if they wanted to play, I don't think they will. If they wanted to play like 11, 12 guys, you probably could figure out a rotation that works that way. Yeah. And I think that's the best part of it. Maybe they do get to a point after the initial part of the season where I'm sure they'll go chalk most likely, right? It's going to be Kelly and Caleb as the other two starters. But let's say that doesn't go well. Let's say rebounding's a big issue. Let's say shooting's been an issue and Yabusele or whoever else has been better on that front with the backup unit. I don't think Nick Nurse is stubborn enough to be like, no, I won't consider it. We're just going to keep doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that is part of the advantage of having Nick Nurse as the coach is our collective expectation that he will try things. He'll play zone. He'll play weird presses, play a 1-2-2. He'll play a box and one, whatever it might be. Yabusele is just another tool in the kit. And that is what excites me, right? He brings something different. He's prime age. He's 29. He's not one of these like Lowry or PJ Tucker, better example, type players where they're in their late 30s. They have very little left to give. This guy's coming in his best shape, in the best form he's ever been in. And if he somehow earns a chance to start, we'll see what it looks like. But I would say pump the brakes.
As cool of a story as it would be, and more traditional lineup that we look at, I still am way more excited of the Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre, Paul George trio of wings where you can just create so much havoc out there with those players, with Joel Embiid behind them, Tyrese Maxey, of course, and his speed, able to get out and transition once those steal turnover opportunities are created. And yes, Joel Embiid rebounding and defending on the back end. And I see that's a big part of our chat here of him being a bad rebounder. The chat is just all,
Joel Embiid's a good rebounder. No, he's not. Yes, he is.
Yeah, so with all that being said, I think there's so much more there with those guys in the lineup. Those three, Paul George, certainly locked in. But Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre in that lineup with them, way more than the Yabusele. But the Yabusele stuff will be fun for the 5 to 10 minutes that he's in there with whomever he's in there with, doing the same things that we're talking about, getting out in the open floor, creating some havoc with the way that he can. Again, getting on the boards, turning and going, or if he's not passing the ball, turning, pushing the ball like we saw in Olympic play and getting the fast break started, kick aheads and all those things that would be out there. And I can just see it with him, with Eric Gordon. You do that, you start to turn, you push the break. He's already on the left side of the behind the 3-point line, and you just spray the ball over to him. Boom. He has the floor is balanced where you have the odd man advantage out there in transition, fired up for a 3-pointer right there. Or he doesn't stop. His motor keeps going. He's now, as you said, the trail man as far as the three. No, he's the trail man filling that lane in the middle of the floor. Eric Gordon's wide open to three. He dumps it off to him for a dunk or layup opportunity down the middle. So as fun as it would be, I still look at the two guys starting with the other three, Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre, is the more fun lineup that I would like to see to start the season off. And if it doesn't work, as Kyle said, Nick Nurse will not hold back, and he will try something different and give them an opportunity to see something else, give them an opportunity to earn some time on the floor.
And here's another thing that I think is important. So Kelly Oubre last season, if you had, let's say he got off to a poor start here. If he was the starter, doesn't shoot well, doesn't play well, gets moved to the bench. His career last year was on enough of a tightrope that I'm not sure he would have responded well. I think because of last season and because of the trust that he's built with Nick Nurse, obviously was able to go from that minimum deal to getting a step up and getting some more money. And now he's one of the more important guys on the team coming into this year. I think you can go to Kelly Oubre and say, hey, I want to try something different tonight. I'll throw Yabusele in there. I'll throw Eric Gordon in there. Maybe I'll throw Kyle out. Whatever, whoever it might be that Nick Nurse wants to do. He has now the cachet and the relationship with Kelly Oubre, and Kelly has the skill set to come off the bench that I think that can be a pretty seamless thing. It's not going to be like I'm worried about my next deal. I'm worried about this.
Because the trust is there.
Yes, I think that trust factor is really important. And I think to the point that many of our chatters have made over the last month or so, I think Kelly has a great skill set to come off the bench, right? To be that, the live wire, whether it's defensively, we've seen him take the challenge more there. Certainly on offense, he's a guy who can get hot. He offers some pretty significant athleticism, both as a cutter, transition player, and as a self-creator. We saw a lot of drives and, generated a lot of free throw attempts last year. So I think that's one of the really good things about Kelly coming back, and maybe what we saw and heard from him throughout last year is that he loves Nick Nurse, right? Like I think he saw last season the opportunity he got.
Call him a rock star.
And the results that he got from buying into that vision. And I think that is going to give them quite a bit of flexibility with the lineups. Because a couple of years ago, I would have thought, if you're messing with Kelly's role, that could go south in a hurry.
Out.
But
he
last season, I think, proved, including me, a lot of people wrong, and showed a level of night-to-night professionalism that I think is setting him and this team up for a great year.
Makes me think about the Steve Kerr piece of it for Team USA, where the three.
Yes.
It's just a question of, will he adjust based on the opponent, who the other two may be? And I kind of think that the Caleb Martin part, he's etched in there. Yeah. But because of Nick Nurse and what we've seen in the past with the Toronto Raptors, that he might change up every now and then and decide to go in that direction. And if Kelly Oubre trusts him,
I think Caleb would be in that same group too. Like he's a pros pro. I don't think he would balk at it. Yeah. I just think if you're looking at, he's more of like, he's a fifth starter.
Yes.
Whereas Kelly can be a guy who's
interchangeable.
You feature him in as the sixth man coming in off the bench.
And that's the beauty of him. When I would say about DeAnthony Melton often, at his best, he's a sixth man. He was very good at that fifth starter role because of who he was surrounded with, but he's best as a sixth man. Same thing for Kelly Oubre. Because of his ability to come in and just wreck shop when he comes in, he'll drop 12 in 2 minutes because of how good of a scorer he is. And he's playing against the second unit. He can take advantage of who's across from him and just go off and bring that energy with that second unit. He could do that with the first unit because we did see that. And we've now seen the value and the importance of him as a defender with the others, when his importance as an offensive player is now the fourth or the fifth option instead of being the second or third. Yes. And on this one, Caleb Martin is the fifth scoring option. Kelly Oubre is the fourth, and he knows that. But when, again, he comes in as that sixth man, it's, hey, let's just fire it up and let's just tear things down right now, burn these nets down. And that's what he does. But there's value in both, and that just shows his maturity now this late in the game, who he is, what he is as a player. And again, the trust with Nick Nurse. And look, if the guy wants another contract, he's on a 2-year deal with an option as a player option in year 2. If he wants another one, which will probably be his last multi-year deal if he gets one, he's going to buy into whatever the coach and the front office asks of him. And that's probably what we're going to see when they start camp in October.
Yeah. I just hope that
they got a lot of players on this team, man.
They do. I hope everybody is coming in with the attitude of like, nothing matters except that goal off in the distance. So for like Joel, that means you're going to probably have to sit a lot of back-to-backs. So you're going to have to
15 back-to-backs.
Prioritize your health over, if it comes down to that 65 game threshold for these end of season awards, that's not what really matters. If you're, Yabusele, there are going to be stretches where you probably don't play at all. For Kelly Oubre, you're going to be starting some nights. You're going to be moved to the bench some nights. If you're Eric Gordon, maybe there are nights where you close. Like you're hot enough from three, you close, and then there are other games you don't have it. And Nick Nurse says, enjoy that seat on the end of the bench. And I think all these guys are going to have to show the humility and the desire to hit that highest team goal. And I think they have the right guys, right? Like I think if we, knowing a lot of these guys, having already covered this team for a while, but also the reputations many of them have around the league, I don't think there's like a clear bad apple or me first guy on the team. And so that's my hope coming into the year, is just that it is everybody just pushing
If
in
there was
one direction.
we just praised him
Yes.
as not being that guy anymore.
Yes.
And Kelly Oubre. Winona's right. She said nothing matters but the championship. And that's it. That's exactly what you pointed out. And those guys, who would you say real fast, the leaders? Kyle Lowry, certainly. Vocal leaders.
I mean, Joel's got to be one. I
He
think
has to now.
The big three have to be, I'm not saying they have to be big, rah-rah, like that type of leader, but Joel has certainly taken on a bigger voice. I think I've mentioned it on the show. During that Knicks series, when times got tough, Maxi's voice was heard in that huddle a lot of animated moments, making sure guys aren't dropping their heads. And I think now that he's on a max contract, featured player, point guard of the future, all that stuff, I think he now feels the outer confidence to be more of that guy and to be more of a leader. But it's going to take, it takes everyone, right? It's
sure.
It can't be the same voice every night. Coaches will tell you that too, right? Part of the reason that assistants are so valuable. Sometimes the message can't come from me, Nick Nurse, or in the past, me, Doc Rivers. It's why someone like a Sam Cassell was valuable, why a Rico Hines is valuable, like the Bobby Jackson. Go on down the list. Everybody has a part to play. So I do think the big three have to be the main leaders, but you have to get it from elsewhere too. Otherwise, it's just the same guys hearing them talk all the time.
And on the Joel side, it's everything that we talked about, from him being around Team USA with those winners, those leaders that have won before in the past and won again with him just last week, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, whatever it was, that he brings that back. That's the leadership. That's everything that we talked about. He finally won something, a gold medal, to see how that feels and to see how others talked about it and how much it meant. There's another goal. And this is exactly what the leadership now doesn't have to be all rah-rah and change his entire personality, but speaking up a little bit more and certainly showing it on the floor from some of the things that were taken away from that experience a month and some change with the rest of that Olympic team that brought home the gold.
I think we might have a super chat we got to sneak in here.
We
before
do have
we
to
get
sneak
up
a
on
super
out
chat.
here.
Saw that from Brian Pump.
Fellas, how did the NBA allow us to get the French Paul Pierce? I don't think I'm going that far, my friend. But it wasn't lit. I said it earlier. I'll say it again. It's a great get for them to get the guy who was the name, I guess he technically wasn't a free agent in that he was signed to Real Madrid, but the available guy coming out of the Olympics,
he was the
chose Philadelphia. Yeah. That's a great get for them. And we haven't brought this up yet. I think there should be a team policy, always one other French speaker on the team for Joel just to keep him feel better. Speak his first language that he grew up speaking. The Batum, he really loved Batum. Yabusele, a different type of guy, a little younger, maybe not as but they're in that same age though, same age right bracket. There. Yeah. So hopefully they're able to have some fun discussions in that locker room.
And the distinction there, when you said why the NBA he chose the Sixers. We can't say that other teams did not come after him. I'm sure some have inquired, but he in the end chose the 76ers, and that's a big key for the entire thing, as Jay calls him, the French Ben Wallace. A lot of Ben Wallace because of the hair.
People were calling him Beignet Wallace, which I was getting a kick out of. But
well, he's now a member of your team, and we have a lot of stuff that we wanted to squeeze in here and talk about, but we'll save that for tomorrow because there's so much to get to. But wanted to tell everybody again one more time that make sure you go sign up to become a diehard member. And when you do, you're able to read Kyle's piece on Yabusele at allphly.com. Training camp is underway right now for the Philadelphia Eagles. They're getting ready for their final preseason game before their first game, Kyle, which is on September 6th when they take on the Green Bay Packers in Brazil. That's in like 2 weeks. 2.5 weeks. Man. That's crazy. At the end of the week, it'll be 2 weeks. So that's crazy. That'll be here sooner than we think. So make sure, everybody, that you go sign up for the Die Hard program to read the story from Kyle, from Derek when he gets back from vacation. Everything with the Eagles training camp right now with Zach and Bo and Les Bowen, and certainly Mishkov and the Flyers with Charlie and everything going on with the Phillies right now with Jim Salisbury. Make sure you all go check it out. All right. Let's get ready to do our roll call, man, and say goodbye to everybody.
A roll call around here.
A lot of folks in here today and yesterday. We appreciate everybody. Thank you.
Everybody's excited, man. You know,
Yabusele, Dancing Bears starting for the Sixers.
Wow. So first of all, to start the roll call, Michael B says, I admit Kyle's piece was worth it on the Die Hard subscription.
Yes.
But then he says, I hate to say that. Michael, what have I done to you?
But he at the end. He laughed at the end.
But thank you, Michael, for being part of the Die Hard program, joining the Discord, all that. Thank you to many of you who are in there, and also some of you who are not that I hope would join us.
Citizen X said we should have re-signed Tobias
in the future. I think, is Citizen X actually a Knicks fan? I feel like there's definitely a covert Knicks fan in here somewhere that people were talking about, but I don't know if that's
no doubt.
Shout out to Citizen X. Thank you to my girl Winona.
Hey Nona,
who's dealing with a layover right now.
Yes,
Said we made the layover bearable. So love to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you to Eugene. Thank you to Martian Lynch.
What up, Gene?
Money Marr. Dave Dewar, Bootzilla,
Boots,
Jess with the Purple Heart.
Hey Jess, what's happening?
Phi Chi, Elliot, Vincent,
what's
Jay,
up,
Just Jay,
Just Jay, always Just Jay. Jay, what up?
Shout out to Jay, Mr. Sandman, who was complimenting your ad reads earlier. Said it doesn't even sound like an ad read coming to you. That's that smooth radio voice, Devon.
Thank you.
Neil Deaver in the building today. Randy Rhubarb.
What up, Randy?
Rick Morse.
Ricky.
Vincent Salamatino.
Oh, what's
there
up,
we
Vince?
go. We haven't seen you in a little bit, I don't think. Vincent, good to see you. I don't think I can scroll up much further. We got Aaron. No.
Spo Babby.
YouTube is always hating on me. Spo Babby in here, as always, as usual.
Let me see who I have. Maybe I have.
Listen, at a certain point, so we have so many commenters throughout the show, I can't scroll
The chat is active, man. It's always active.
Chat is hot. It's been great to open the Monday with a fun show, new signing, something fresh. Mid to late August. You don't get many of these. Thank you, everybody, for coming through. On your way out, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. Oh, shout out Provolone
John.
I see you, buddy.
We see you.
And if you hit the thumbs up button, that'll be a sign to Derek to stop tweeting at us, stop popping up, and to enjoy his vacation. So please do that so he'll leave us alone. Thank you to Andrew filling in on the production today.
Where are the dancing bears in the chat? I don't see any dancing bears. You know, the
French Draymond, baby.
Yeah, I don't see them.
You got the dancing bears on your Grateful Dead hat?
I should have worn it today. I'll wear it tomorrow.
Would have been the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, that would have been perfect.
Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow, 3:00.
See y'all.
We all silly like the mayor.